Okay, so in this video, I'm going to light some fire under your butt and get rid of the excuse of, I don't have enough time. So I'm just gonna get it out there. Stop saying that. So in this video, I'm basically going to compare time management to money management. And there are good and bad ways to manage your money and time. And so we're gonna talk about things you should do and things that you shouldn't do. And if you don't have enough money, you can get more. And if you don't have enough time, you can manage it better. So I think when it comes to managing your time and managing your money, a lot of people think it's gonna be really boring, and if I set up a budget like with my money, it's gonna be so boring and it's just all gonna go to groceries and bills and I won't have anything left for fun. And I think people do that with their time too. They just think that if I start weekly planning, or if I plan my time, I'm gonna plan in my chores and I'll plan in my cleaning and getting the laundry done, and then I won't have any time for fun because I just planned away all my life. And a good budget with your time and with your money isn't like that. It takes into account you and what your priorities are. And if your priorities are cleaning, then by all means we'll plan that in. But if for you the number one thing that you want is like getting the joy and the zest out of life, that's what you plan in first. That's what you plan into your timely budget first. And same like with your money, whatever your priorities are to you, and that's different for each person, but whatever your money priorities are, that's what you plan in first. And if there's something that's not important to you, like if cleaning's not important to you, then by all means do not put it in just because society makes you feel like that's what you have to put into a timely budget. Because people feel like if they budget their time like that, it's gonna be really boring, they don't. And what that turns into is a really chaotic life. They feel like they're always like, oh, I forgot I said yes to that person. And they're always kind of behind and showing up late to this, showing up late to that, and they didn't budget enough time for this. And they feel like really behind and chaotic and feel like they're not meeting anyone's expectations. That's really shameful. Like I think there's a lot of shame attached to managing your time poorly as well as managing your money poorly. And I just want to help you feel more confident in that and live a life that you want and aligns with your priorities, so that you're not just chasing what everyone else wants you to do and feeling behind in that. Okay, so I want to kind of outline some of the ways that time management and money management are very similar. And it seems like a lot of people have a grasp on at least one of these two things, and so you can kind of compare if you're better at one or better at the other. Maybe it can kind of help you with it. So one thing with time management is to set for you, what are your goals and your priorities? So for me, like with my time, those are like my quadrant 2 tasks. Those are things like filming a YouTube video. Yeah, it's not urgent. Nothing's gonna happen if I don't do it. It's not putting money in the bank right now, but it's a quadrant 2 task. It's not urgent and it's really helping my goals. So for me right now, YouTube is a priority. So when I am planning out my week, I figure out, okay, what are 5 hours I can spend on YouTube this week? And I put those in first, and those are non-negotiable. Those are priorities. For different people at different seasons, maybe like your marriage is the number one important thing, or your kids are the most important thing, or your job, you know, whatever it is, you know what your priorities are, and you plan that in first. Because just like with budgeting with money, what you make room for, you'll have enough for. But if it's not your priority and you don't put it in first, you're not gonna have enough. Another similarity is for both my time and my money, I have a monthly budget meeting. So I set up and I do monthly planning and I do budget planning. And I figure out, okay, these are the things, like if I was gonna, my ideal month, how do I want it to look? What fun things do I wanna do? What productive things do I wanna do? And I just kind of list out kind of like a bucket list for the month. What things do I wanna do productively and for fun? And I write them down, and I kind of just write them down. I make a brainstorm list, and then I sort them into what week. Well, I'm like, oh, I wanna go to the fair. Well, the fair's in town on this week, so I'll put that in this week. And I don't necessarily pick the day, but when I plan my month, I at least plan what week I want to do what, and I sort them into those weeks. So I first start off by doing just kind of a big brainstorm, just like with my money. Like I think, okay, do a big brainstorm. Christmas is coming up. I want to get this much paid off loans, and I kind of do my big brainstorm, and then from there I figure out, I organize it into priorities, what goes where. Another thing that's in common with these two types of budgeting is you have to know your expenses and your income. So that's kind of obvious for like money, but with your time, you need to know how much time you actually have. And the way I figured this out was with time blocking. So I logged my time for a week, like every 15 minutes, like, what am I doing now? What am I doing now? And I figured out where my time was actually going. You have to know like what your expenses are. You know, your income is, you've got 24 hours in a day. Everyone has the exact same income in this case. Different people just budget it differently. So I time block. So the planners that I choose are an hourly format by every 15 minutes, and I block what I have. That way I can just visually see really quickly where my empty blocks are. And if I didn't see that, if I didn't see where I had wiggle room, that time, just all those little things get filled up with social media. So another principle with like budgeting with time is you're supposed to get to zero. So if you make like $3,000 in a month, you pick where every single cent of that goes till you're down to zero. That's fun. I mean, it's not all just chore things. So that's like fun things also. And so you get down to zero. And I also do that with my time. I don't leave any time unaccounted for. I might leave some of it vague. Like I might say, these couple hours are going to be intuition time for me, which just means that when I get to that moment, what is my gut telling me that I need? So you don't have to assign like the specific thing that you're gonna do, but you just say, this time is creative time. This time is productive time. For productive time, I actually assign what I was gonna do so that I am productive, but make sure you've accounted for like every single bit of time, and it should reflect your priorities. So if your priorities are that you wanna have a really joyful day, then most of your day should be spent on things that really give you joy. And so when you sum it out to zero, you should see that a lot of the time that you spent was on things that bring you joy. Another similarity is that you should leave a buffer. Like in finances, people will have emergency fund. They're like, you know what, things happened that were unaccounted for, and you have to account for those things. So I feel like some people are better at estimating how much time things are gonna take than others. But for some people, like I would recommend, like if you're just like starting out with time management, just double how long you think it'll take. Like if you think it's gonna take 20 minutes, double it, maybe it'll take 40. Especially if you're someone who's running late a lot. If you're someone who's constantly running late, you should really think about doubling the amount of time that you're estimating, because everyone has the same amount of time. Some people just give themselves a bigger buffer than other people. And like same with money, like everyone has accidents, you break your arm or whatever. Some people just have an emergency fund to cover that sort of thing, and then some people are then taking out loans and they're in debt. It's kind of the equivalent of being late. Kind of another money-making thing that people do is they'll like plan for the future. You know, they put money in 401ks, they're planning for retirement. And I feel like with your time, some of your time needs to reflect that as well. Like you don't want to just be like living from day to day, kind of reactive in the moment, but you want to be doing some quadrant 2 tasks that are not urgent. Like, you know, retirement's not urgent, but it is something that's important. So like invest in yourself. I mean, that's what retirement is. You're like investing in yourself. I feel like it's really important to invest some time in yourself and learning and creativity. Make sure you include those sort of things in your schedule. Another thing, I've heard a lot of people that are married, they'll do this. So like they'll like share their finances, and then they'll each have their own account. That's their own account. It's their fun account. They can each do whatever they want with it. The other one doesn't touch it. And I feel like that is a good principle for your time also. Like even if you're married, to have time where you can each do just like whatever you want to do. Like there's just time blocked off, that there's like no pressure on the other one not to do chores or whatever. Or even if you're single, but to just have some time for yourself. You've allotted this time. This is fun time. Another good financial principle is like when you go to the store, don't buy something that you didn't go there for. So like if it's a spur of the moment thing, maybe sleep on it and then go back and get it. And I feel like the same goes with your time. So if someone, like you go to hang out with someone, then they spring something on you like, hey, do you want to do this tomorrow? Like just sleep on it, give it a second. But also in your gut, if you know that you don't want to do it, don't do it. Like I've heard the phrase, like if it isn't a hell yes, it's a no. Like you get this one life, you want to enjoy it. And if it's just kind of like I kind of want to do it, I feel obligated to do it, like don't do that sort of thing. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And you can usually tell that sort of thing on the spot. Like don't give someone a like probably or a maybe. Like usually a probably or a maybe means I don't want to do it, but I'm trying to be polite, so I'm going to procrastinate and I'm not going to tell you until late tomorrow. Just tell the person, don't get their hopes up in order to just dash it. Just say no. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And one thing to realize is that it can be hard saying no to people and hurting people's feelings, but you have to realize that a no to something is a yes to something else. So if you say no to this person and like you're not really wanting to do it, that's now a yes to someone that you do care about more or in a deeper relationship with. Like if I say yes to doing someone this favor, that's a no to seeing my husband more tonight. Like there's just a trade-off. I can do this with my time or I can do this with my time, but I can't do both. So when you say yes to one, you're saying no to the other. So you have to think about like this other financial principle of opportunity cost. Like the thing is not just how much it costs, like it costs an hour to hang out with this person, but it's also the cost of not being able to do this thing that really lights you up, which could be like hanging out with your husband. Another thing is that sometimes with financial goals, people have too many at once. They're like, okay, I want to pay off this car, I want to pay off the student loan, I want to save for a house. They want to do all these things at once. So they put these tiny little drops of money in each month. They're paying like $50 each month for each of these goals. And then it seems like they're making no progress, and then you just kind of get dejected about it, so then you stop. It's kind of the same with your time. So instead of spreading yourself thin, really give yourself a focus for each day, a focus for each week, and nail that thing down and get it done. So you're not just, don't drop one pebble in 50 lakes, drop a huge boulder in one lake, and then the next month move on to the next one. Another money-making thing is that like the frivolous little bits add up. like the Snickers at the grocery store and getting this top that was on sale. All those little things add up. And that's the same thing with time management. And I feel like a lot of that comes down to social media. You're like, oh, I got 5 minutes here, I guess I'll just scroll on social media. Or I got 10 minutes here, I guess I'll just scroll on social media. But all those little bits add up. And if you had, while you're waiting at the doctor's office, if you had a book with you or something, that time really adds up and it doesn't feel like it. But then by the time that's all done, you've finished this book and you've gotten that much more ahead. Another like financial principle that a lot of people use is tithing. And so like, even if you're not a Christian or particularly religious, I would still like, I do think it's a really good idea to spend a chunk of your day for spiritual time. So like time getting like alone with like God, if you believe in that, or yourself, just really time to get to know yourself and get quiet and let thoughts that you have really surface. Because you could spend all day ignoring those thoughts, or you could just take the beginning of your day to kind of realize these thoughts that are coming in, and in a peaceful environment where you're in control, you can address those thoughts before you go on. Because if you don't address those thoughts, they are still kind of pinging all day throughout the day. Later on in the day, they're multitasking, and you can't effectively deal with it when you're multitasking, and that's when it turns into anxiety, when you haven't effectively dealt with those things, or when it turns into depression. Basically, when you run from emotions, they get worse. And so I really think it's important to take some time at the beginning of the day to address, get a good reset on emotions. Okay, so that's how, and I think there are probably way even more than that, but some ways that I just thought of that money and time budgeting compare. So like for an exercise, like what I want you to do is just kind of map out what your average day looks like. So for me, it was like get up, skip breakfast, class, lunch, class, come home, run an errand, eat out at a fast food restaurant, spend time on my phone, watch an episode of TV, go to bed. That's like what an average day. And when I did that, I was like, ooh, I'm not liking this average day. And then you write out what your ideal day is. So even, let's say you don't live where you live and you don't have any of the time restrictions, your ideal day, future you, maybe in 20 years, what is your ideal day? And my ideal day was waking up an hour earlier and having this ritual where I daily plan and daily journal and have a smoothie and work out. Also, another good resource is the book When, and basically it deals with the different like phonotypes. So it's like, I mean, the simplified version is night owls and early birds, but everyone has kind of this like graph that goes through the day, and everyone, like no matter any of the types, between like noon and 3 o'clock, I think is like that slump. And so that's when everyone has an energy low. So I know that in my ideal day, I don't want to plan anything really creative or important during that time. And toward the end of that slump, I like to, during an ideal day, work out during that time, because then it gets me out of kind of that trough. So I kind of mapped out my ideal day. And then what you have to do is look at like compare and contrast. What is dramatically different? Like, did you put social media in your ideal day? Probably not nearly as much scrolling, unless it's like some career, but you probably didn't put scrolling on there. And there are lots of things that you can probably see that are different. Like when I don't plan my day, I end up running errands and going to a fast food restaurant. Like that's not helpful for me to just like slip into that. It's actually a lot more boring if you don't plan than it is to plan, even though a lot of people don't think planning's fun. So I would just give it a try implementing some of these principles. I think I am going to make a video specifically. I have a video about how I monthly and weekly plan, but I want to make an updated version. Give it a try. Give it a try planning your time just like you would budget your money. And you know, if you hate it, you hate it, and you can just go back to whatever you're doing now, but I would give it at least a try. So map out your current day versus your ideal day and see where you can afford to make some gains and some improvements. And there's a reason we're doing this. I want you to live a life that you love. I don't want you to be pulled in all directions by all these other people's demands and spur of the moment things that it turns out you didn't even really want to do, and then you're late to something that you do care about. I want you to live a life that you love, not that other people designed for you. I want you to have great relationships. I don't want you to feel like you're not meeting the expectations of people around you. I want you to feel in alignment. I want you to feel good about the choices that you make with your time. I want you to feel centered and to feel like the choices you made today, if you had to repeat all those same choices over again, you would do them. And if you had to live this exact same day over and over and over again, that you would feel good about that because it was a good management of your time. And if you are not okay with repeating today over and over and over again for the rest of your life because you realize it's not pushing the needle, then maybe you should rethink how you're spending your time and maybe be a little bit more intentional. Like you can be financially poor and you can also be poor with time. You can be in debt with money and you can be in debt with time. You can be constantly running late. You can feel like your money and your time is controlling your life. And I don't want you to dilute or water down your life with things that you don't really care about. I want you to have a vibrant, flavorful life full of the flavor of things that you really care about, not the diluted things that other people care about or things that people told you that you should care about, but things that really feel in alignment with you. Deep down in your gut, you know what those things are. So I want you to go ahead and plan out tomorrow. And I don't mean chores, I mean things that feel in alignment with you. So if you pick one emotion that you want to feel tomorrow, like joy for example, I want you to plan out what that would look like. If you had to live tomorrow over and over and over again, and you think that would result in a joyful life, that's the thing that I want you to do. So I hope that you feel a little more motivated, focused, centered on what you truly want and feel a little bit more alignment with what you want your life to look like. Thanks so much for watching guys. Let me know what you guys think, and stop saying you don't have enough time, because we are all just as wealthy as each other when it comes to time.